Daniel White Hodge. I teach over at North Park University. I direct the Center for Youth Ministry Studies. I also teach courses in youth ministry, run the undergraduate program in youth ministry, and teach courses in the seminary as well. My background has dealt a lot with the intersections of the sacred, the secular, and the profane, and really looking at where God shows up in those three areas, and particularly as it pertains to youth and young people. So a lot of my work has been looking in the areas of hip hop and religion. My dissertation focused on Tupac Shakur and his gospel message, and really trying to ask the question, what does this generation need? How do we engage? How do we actually look at this generation, what they're dealing with and what they're engaging with, as opposed to trying to create something that's not necessarily going to connect with this generation? And so I've been very interested in that, popular culture, and definitely the African American diaspora as it pertains to the church experience. And I think these areas coming together here at Fuller, I think I'm very excited about. You're a potential cohort student, DMin program. You've already made the decision, okay, I want to do doctoral level work. I don't necessarily know if I want to create theory and do all this hardcore scientific research, but I know I want to do something, I want to better myself. So you're already thinking along those lines of betterment, bettering yourself, bettering your community, potentially even your church, your environment, your missional environment. So I would ask you these few questions then. How do you think, or how do you plan to go about reaching this generation? What are your plans of doing that? Now, obviously, that's what you're coming to school about, but what do you think about this generation, irregardless if they're, 50, because we're all kind of immersed in this generation's motif, or 14, how would you go about doing that? And I think what we're trying to do in the DMin and African American Church Studies is to really create the next generation, right? The next generation African American pastor, Latino pastor, white pastor, male, female, doesn't matter, in a context that is contemporary, that is popular culture, that is historical, that is rooted in the Bible, that is rooted in the gospel. How do we communicate effectively, right? The gospel of Christ in a society that's grown up with Miley Cyrus, that's grown up with Macklemore, that's grown up with Friends. How do we engage with that? How do we begin to look at those things? How do we begin to interpret and deconstruct those things? And those are some things that we're going to be dealing with. Because I am personally tired of dealing with Christians and churches. We're just kind of recycling the same old thing. It's the pig with lipstick. It's the pig with lipstick. And I'm tired of having churches that do that. I want a renovated church. I want a dynamic church. And we have a generation right now that we need to reach. And that's what this program is going to train you with. Ephraim and I are going to be able to help facilitate and journey with you to help you think a lot more critically about the issues at hand, but more importantly, how to apply theologically, biblically, gospelly speaking, to a contemporary age that's changing by the minute. I would say I would personally say it was a mix. I mean, we're definitely going to focus in on African American, the black church. That's going to be the premise. But you can be anywhere. And when you think about what the black church has done, what its contributions have been theologically in the United States in particularly, that's phenomenal, right? And so we have to study that. And I think when you think about evangelicalism, when you think about outreach, when you think about missions, when you think about folks who have struggled, who have belabored, who have fought the good fight, the African American church is really a resemblance of that. When you think about countries that are dealing with issues of oppression and disenfranchisement, people tend to look at the African American church. So if you're saying, well, Dan, I don't know, man, I'm probably gonna be working in Riverside. I'm probably gonna be out, in Barrington, Illinois, in the suburbs, right? I don't know if this is gonna fit. Well, guess what? Multi-ethnicity is coming to you. In the United States, we've never really been true monolithic, but we're really heading, in the next 25 years, we are going to have a majority minority. And when you think about even the populations of Los Angeles is close to 55% Latino. Now that's a pan-ethnic statement, but it's still Latino, almost half the population of Los Angeles. How do we begin to engage in those things? How do we begin to talk about those things? How do I, as a pastor, while still wanting to know about the Greek and exegetical methods, but how do I speak in racial terms? How do I begin to connect culturally, interculturally within that? And so I would believe, I know this program is for folks who are wanting to do just that, white, Latino, Black, Pan-African, Asian. This I think is going to be a great program for them. Is that I think what Ephraim and I are really trying to do here is something new. We've been sitting over the literature, the books, the course material, just even the structure of courses. We really want people to think outside of the box. We really want people to begin to focus and look at what are the bigger issues, but also what are some of the minor issues that we get hung up on, right, that turn into bigger issues, right? You may not think much of somebody who is, for example, a sex offender. How do you deal with somebody who's a sex offender in your congregation, right? It might be a little thing, but then how do you deal with that? How do you deal with issues of leadership? How do you deal with the growing LGBTQ community, and what does that look like theologically? How do we engage that? How do we begin to look at the hip hop generation, right? How do we begin to look at somebody like Tupac and understand Tupac as an actual missionary for this generation, that Tupac is still speaking theologically, Christologically to this generation? And so those are the things that I think we're going to be focusing on that are new and outside of the box to create, again, a next generation pastor that is ready to hit the ground running.